This is Chiming In.
I'm not here to embarrass my folks, but I know what it's like for my dad to slam a can of baked beans on the table on a Monday and say, lad, this is your dinner for the rest of the week. If you want to eat, I'd go elsewhere. I know what it's like, freezing cold, wet, muddy, for mum to say, Ash, there's no hot water. If you want to go and have a shower, I'd go down the caravan park or jump in the ocean and wash off. I wasn't a great kid. I wasn't a rat bag, but I wasn't a great kid. And he just said, you've got a crossroads here. Okay, you're showing all the promise as a good rugby league player, but you can go one way with all your dickhead mates, or you can go the other way and grab this career opportunity with both hands.
So what's the game given you? What lessons has the game taught you?
Everything. Rugby league for me, you know, the food in my belly, clothes on my back, roof over my head is all due to this sport.
A great man and a great friend and a great servant of rugby league, Ashton Sims. Welcome to Chiming In.
Chiming in, here we are in the middle of the city. I never thought I'd be in this position, but of all the highlights I've had in rugby league over the years, this is the crown jewel right here, Stephen.
Oh, thank you for your kind words, Ashton. Great to see you, mate. Hey, a lot to get through today, my friend, because you have had a fantastic career. You played 368 professional games of rugby league. That's massive numbers.
Yeah, I was very lucky, humbled, and privileged to be able to serve rugby league on a playing sense for 17 years, 12 years here in the NRL, and 5 years over the English Super League. But some of my proudest moments have been on the field, but certainly off the field. The friends that you make, the friendships that you forge, the people that you meet, but also obviously my family, my wife and 4 kids are the top of what I've done in my career. But I'm really looking forward to this next journey of mine in rugby league.
Yeah, very refreshing when footy players talk about family, mate. It's great. So let's start with where you're at right now. You are working in rugby league. You've found your way into a job in Group 7. Tell us about what you do and how you got there.
Yeah, look, so I'm now the football operations manager of the South Coast Group 7 Rugby League competition in both the juniors and the seniors. My primary role is to oversee the day-to-day operations, implementing strategies, actions, programs to solidify what we've currently got, but also look to the future, ensuring that we are implementing things that will see Group 7 Rugby League as known as a real benchmark or a premier rugby league competition in New South Wales.
What's in the water down there in Group 7 and in particular Gerringong? How come they're producing so many quality players? Yeah,
look, we're very lucky to have been a purple patch at the moment with the current players that we've got in the NRL. You think about guys like Ruben Garrick, Tyron Wishart, Hamish Stewart and Dylan Egan, who have just made their NRL debuts this year. And then over to the NRLW, we've got Tegan Berry, Keely Brown, and also Evie McGrath there at the West Tigers. And we've got some really, really good ones coming through, some juniors. I think of, even a girl by the name of Indy Bostock, who Jack Bostock up at the Dolphins. Jack Bostock, who's a Stingrays junior. She's going to be an absolute ripper in years to come. And there's plenty on that production line, mate. And it's really exciting for us to be able to provide a pathway to get into that NRL system. But it's not all about making the NRL. What we want to do, we want to provide an environment that's really positive, disciplined, inclusive to ensure that all key stakeholders enjoy playing rugby league there on the South Coast. Because at the end of the day, for 114 years, rugby league has been the heartbeat of winter sports on the South Coast. And we want to continue that for not just for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, for the foreseeable future.
And it's incredible because you cut your teeth there. You grew up in Gerringong. Large sporty family, and now you're overseeing the future of kids like you were coming through. That's good.
It's probably a bit of a double-edged sword there because, I do have that real emotional attachment to the sport, to the competition. So, I do work long hours. I am on the phone a lot. But I want to make sure I don't neglect family time there as well, which it's a balance that I've got to be a lot better at. because I do enjoy getting around and having a few conversations with people there on the front lines. Because at the end of the day, you know what, we're all volunteers. I'm only the only paid person there. All my clubs are all volunteers, and I absolutely love every single one of our clubs. We've got great people in clubland, and I want to ensure that I'm not just a voice behind a phone or a set of fingers tapping behind an email. I want to make sure I'm out there on the front lines with them. I want to have my finger on the pulse as to what we need to do, what we need to achieve to attain our goal as being that Premier Rugby League competition or a benchmark Rugby League competition in New South Wales. And we've got great support from New South Wales Rugby League, huge support from NRL development there to ensure, you know, what we're doing today is making Group 7 better for tomorrow and the future.
So, mate, tell us about your early days as a young whippersnapper down there as a footy player and how it all unfolded for you and your siblings.
Yeah, look, it's a journey that we are very proud of. Look, I'm not here to embarrass my parents at all when I say a couple of these stories that I'm going to probably go through today, but we grew up in very, very humble beginnings. You know, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but what we did have, we had cricket in the summer, footy in the winter, surfing all year round, and a band called Metallica in our ears 24/7. So that was plenty of inspiration. Look, we're the son of a dairy farm. I'm the son of a dairy farmer and a Fijian immigrant. Look, we had so much love in the house. We had love. We had sport. We didn't have a lot of external things, you know, like TVs for big portions of the time. So it was when we used to come home, Mum would say, "Well, right, do your homework and then go outside and play. Come home when the street lights come on." And that was our growing up. But we had really good people around us too, some families, some friends in and around us that helped support us go through some issues that we experienced.
Yeah.
Look, again, I'm not here to embarrass my folks, but you know, I know what it's like for my dad to slam a can of baked beans on the table on a Monday and say, "Lad, this is your dinner for the rest of the week. If you want to eat, I'd go elsewhere." I know what it's like to ride home down Blackwood Street at Gerringong there from Michael Cronin Oval to home, freezing cold, wet, muddy, for Mum to say, "Ash, there's no hot water. If you want to go and have a shower, go down the caravan park or jump in the ocean and wash off."
Yeah.
Again, I'm not here to embarrass my folks because at the end of the day, I had the best childhood ever because we lived by the Sims laws or some real key values in and around the house. And that was be on time, be in uniform, manners and respect go everywhere, respect everyone, but fear no one. Yeah. And there's some traits that I want to ensure that I pass on to my kids because, look, I won't say we were ultra successful, but you know what, we did okay as a family.
Did okay. So your brothers, Tarek and Corbin, both very, very, very good NRL players, and your sister Ruwan, who was regarded as one of the greatest female players that the game's seen.
Yeah.
Not bad. And, of course, you with your 368 next year, mate.
Well, it's again, something to be very proud of. You missed the 3 World Cups, but I'll just leave that.
I'll get to them.
Oh, you might get to that a little bit later.
3 World Cups.
Look, I'm going to be honest, mate. I was a battler. I was, you know, I wasn't great. I wasn't crap, but I did my job. And I loved doing my job, but I also loved motivating the people around me when I was a player. You know, again, I was probably a run of the mill player, but I enjoyed getting the best out of people, motivating them, making people laugh, enjoying being that being that sort of lightning rod for people to find their best, to be at their best. And now it's transitioned into a job that I'm truly grateful for and that I truly take seriously.
So you found your way to the Steelers in the junior rep program and then eventually onto the Dragons franchise. How did you make your way to the Steelers?
Yeah, so I was playing up at Michael Cronin Oval one day and I had a guy called Alan Squeaker Carroll who's still around these days. He's at Shellharbour Sharks and he had a chat to me after the game and introduced me to the great man himself, Craig Young. Craig Young was one of the biggest influences on a 16-year-old Ashton Sims that I could have because he taught me at a very young age that talent will only get you so far. You need to work hard. You know, you need to look after your sleep, your diet, your exercise. You needed to make sure that, you know, if you've got a big game the next day, the night before, that you're not out till 10, 11 and 12 o'clock at night with your mates and then getting getting 5 or 6 hours sleep, then trying to play at your best the next day. There was plenty of time for mucking about and carrying on like a lad later on in life. But if you want to take this career seriously, you need to knuckle down, and because at the end of the day, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
He's an intimidating character, Craig Young. Why is it you felt you had such a good relationship with him?
Probably because he knew my circumstances. He knew where I was coming from. He knew that I had talent, but I was very raw. And I'll never forget Albert. When I made my first New South Wales CHS team, he gave me a pair of his old Colorado shoes because I didn't have any. I had my black school shoes, but he said these ones will look a bit better, and they were those brown suede ones. I remember him, coming down to home, taking me up to Michael Cronin's hotel there. We only lived, as the crow flies, 50 metres away from Cronin Oval. Michael Cronin Hotel, and just buying me dinner just to make sure I was okay, but also. For me, there was probably, looking back on it now, there was a subconscious approach to what he was doing, and that was to ensure that, I was doing the right things in and around my routine, my structure, consistency, 3 words that I really abide by these days. Albert really reinforced those, and rugby league itself really reinforced that. The values that my parents taught me, rugby league really solidified that in those years to come. And
you had a good start to your career. What age did you debut with the Dragons?
Yeah, I was lucky to debut at 18 years old.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
playing the forwards.
Oh yeah, at the time I was the youngest St George Illawarra Dragon debutant, which was it was a really emotional moment for me, because what it did, it just gave me an understanding of all the sacrifice, the dedication, the commitment that it takes to be a professional rugby league player. And I've got to really thank Nathan Brown for giving me the opportunity there. Brownie taught me a lot of things, not just about rugby league, but in life, which I'm still grateful for in these days. I see him sitting up there with Rolsey at in the Parramatta Eels, and always have a bit of a smile on my face, because he taught me plenty of things. But one thing that really sticks out is he once said to me, he goes, Basher or Ash, it's the hardest thing in rugby league is to make your NRL debut. The hardest thing in rugby league is to stay in first grade week in, week out. And you can't just rock up on Thursday at training and say, all right, I'm getting ready to play this weekend. Saturday starts on Monday. I think it was an old Jack Gibson saying, because I remember Michael Cronin, the great Crow, who I'm still good friends with to this day. He said in and around the same thing. He goes, Saturday afternoon or Sunday always starts on Monday morning. So you can't live like a rat bag from Monday to Thursday, and then on Friday say, oh shit, I've got to get ready for a game here on Sunday afternoon. So I better start eating well, I better start sleeping well. It's a long cycle. It's arduous at times, but that routine, structure, consistency piece is something that I've always lived by, and something that I want to ensure that I give onto my kids as well.
Mate, you look like you could play today.
Not a chance.
Look at you.
No chance. I've seen what these kids do these days on the field, and I just like to swim, box. My knees are shot. My back's a bit sore, but my mind's as strong as ever.
Yeah. What was
except for a couple of hits here or there I might have copped.
What was your success like at the Dragons over the 3 or 4 years that you were there?
Look, we had some really good years there. Looking back on it, it's a bit of a backhanded compliment when people say, you guys were probably the best side never to win a competition. And I truly believe we were. I could rattle off some names and you just think, wow, they probably should have.
Give them to us.
Give them to you. Okay, so I'm thinking about guys like Clint Greenshields, Wes Nagama, Matty Cooper, Mark Gasnier, Matty Head, Dean Young, Brett Furman there a few years, but then Benny Hornby there in the backs as well. Benny Cray, one of my good friends, started on the wing but moved to the back row. But then we had a forward pack that were formidable, man. We had Jason Riles, Luke Bailey, Mark Riddell, Lincoln Withers there for a while. God rest his soul, Lance Thompson, Brent Kite. We had, I think I said Dean Young before. In and around the lock
some
there,
quality
Justin
players.
Paul, Benny, like I said, Benny Cray, a good friend of mine, and Justin. We all grew up together there. We had a red hot side, mate. And I know I'm missing some guys.
And young too, weren't they?
We were all young. We were all bulls. We were all, we're all savages. All we wanted was just a piece of that silverware. And we had really good role models. And the 2 guys I wanted to make sure I left till last was Sean Timmins and Trent Barrett.
Right.
2 guys who bled Illawarra Steelers, who absolutely bled St George Illawarra Dragons, New South Wales country representatives. and also Australian representatives. We had a really good side. We had a really good time too.
Yeah.
But we just come up against some sides who are just absolute savages, man. Yeah, I think of that Bulldogs 2004 team. Get out of here, man.
Yeah.
They were next level. We thought we were big, rough, tough. Then we come up against them and think, okay, here we go. And your team too, the Chooks. Were you or were you Dragons when I was there?
Oh, of course I was a Dragon.
I was your favourite son there.
Oh,
for
you
a
were.
while.
You're like a son to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What happened? Why did your tenure come to an end there at the Dragons? Do you recall what happened?
Yeah, I do. And, again, with Brownie, I've got to give him props. He was straight up with me, called me into the office and said, look, you do have 12 months remaining on your contract, but if you want to have a look elsewhere, feel free to. At the time, I didn't compute it really well until I got a phone call from a man by the name of Steve Chimes Gillis, who sort of gave it to me in no uncertain terms that you're probably time to move on. As a Gerringong lad, as a South Coast boy, I thought just playing 10 years at the Steelers and then going back and being a fireman at Gerringong was what I was destined for. But what it taught me was, okay, when life hits you, there's always adversities in life. Unfortunately, life's not just one linear path. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be ebbs and flows. At that time, I had some downs as well. I was injured. I'd been suspended on field a couple of times, been dropped from first grade. So I knew what adversity looked like, but that was one that sort of hit me in the solar plexus there, so to speak. But you know what? I slept on it and just thought about, what would my dad do? What would my parents do in this situation? And that was, okay, let's get proactive. Let's get onto the people in the know, such as yourself, and let's look for another club and use this moment as motivation to do something or be someone in the game. I think I'd played about 5 years by then, 2003 to about 2007, 5 seasons. But I'll always be forever indebted to the St. George Illawarra Dragons. They're my local club. They're my hometown. I'm still back in the area now. I go for them like nothing else. I go for all my 3 NRL clubs, but having that emotional attachment to the red and white is always something that I'll cherish.
So from experience, when a player gets tapped by the coach or the CEO, generally it's near impossible to turn the ship around and get going again. It means you're a dead duck. You're on your way out. So what did we do? I can't even remember. What was the plan?
So the plan was to reach out to a couple of clubs. We had a couple of clubs that were interested, which was great. Had a meeting with the Canterbury Bulldogs.
Okay.
Yeah, which was really good.
Don't remember.
No, that you wouldn't, because again, God rest his soul, Folksy, down at the Kyma Harbour there. Okay. Went and had a coffee with him, and that was a real genuine destination. I was thinking of going. I think about the 2004 side. Willie was still there. O'Neilly was still there. Bobcat was there. I grew up playing against Sonny Bill, and Rennie was still there. So I thought that'd be a great fit with Nate. Met with the Newcastle Knights.
Did we?
Had a little bit of interest from the Gold Coast Titans, but it was my decision to think, you know what, if I'm going to give this rugby league a crack, I want to get right outside my comfort zone. I don't want to keep playing these games and then driving back to Gerringong and having my mates, who I love still to this day, put their arm around me and say, mate, you actually played really good. Remember that run that you did? But I know I didn't play great. But I wanted to get right outside my comfort zone. So I got a phone call from Wayne Bennett one day, who said he'd like me to go up and tour the facilities, as it were. So myself and your good self there, I think they put us in first class, or they might have just put us in economy, but it felt like first class.
We flew to Brisbane, eh?
We flew to Brisbane.
Day trip
to Brisbane. Met Andrew G there. He one of the great men of rugby league.
He was their footy operations manager.
He was the footy operations
Straight
manager.
shooter.
Straight as a dime. He doesn't call the spade a spade. He calls it a effing shovel. And a great man too. Got a lot of time, got a lot of respect for him. I remember not liking him growing up when he played for Queensland, and him and Mark Guy had their set too. And he took us to Broncos headquarters, had a tour of the facility. I was very impressed, as you were. You were wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, weren't you?
Great.
It was great. Yeah. And then the great man, then Wayne, come downstairs and
he walked in like the Messiah.
Like the Messiah. The Red Sea parted, and he just come through and asked if we come up to his office. Yeah. And then your memory is probably a little bit better than mine.
Well, I think he spoke about about some plans for you and that. I think that the purpose of our trip was to have a look around, but all of a sudden he said to us, mate, would you like Ashton to leave? I want to talk to you about making an offer. I'm pretty sure I said, no, Ashton's welcome to stay. It'd be good education for him, and let's see how we go. So he said, what do you want? And do you remember what we said?
I think I had a figure in mind, but I think you blew it right out of the water.
Yeah, it might have gone higher.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good life lesson for me.
Yeah.
Always aim high because you can just go a little bit lower.
So we threw this figure at him for 3 years, and he looked at us and said, done. He said, what else do you want?
Yeah.
I said, nothing.
No.
I don't know, what was he talking about there?
Not exactly sure what he was talking about.
Yeah. He said, you don't need anything else.
Yeah, it might have been relocation
Oh, that
costs
was all standard. But I think he was implying, we've got to give you anything else on top of what we're giving you.
You got a unit in
Kangaroo
Valley. Not Kangaroo Valley. Yeah, Kangaroo Valley there.
You got a Ferrari, didn't you?
Yeah, the one with the Hyundai badge on it.
So anyway, we did a deal that day. We all shook hands.
We did. Yeah, we did. It was incredible.
You made a commitment like that.
We made a commitment like that because, and look, I'm not just saying it because you're here, Steve. I've always looked up to you, and I've always held you in high regard. And what your advice carries a lot of weight with me. And I remember talking to you about it and saying, look, if you're serious about getting outside your comfort zone, because I was back then, and I still am now. I enjoy reading and listening to podcasts in and around motivation, in and around how do they motivate themselves to be at their very best. And I remember hearing some things in and around. Look, I was a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan growing up. I was, and I still am to this day. I think
do an impersonation?
I think he's the great. No, I can't, and I won't.
Right.
I won't even do him a disservice. Yeah. But I used to watch the Pumping Iron. I used to read his encyclopedia, the Arnold encyclopedia, and just little things that he said here and there. And he was big into being outside your comfort zone is the only way you're going to find growth. So if I was going to find growth as a rugby league player and as a person, I needed to get outside my comfort zone, and that was getting right away from everything I know, going up to the Sunshine State, Brisbane as it was.
They rarely came knocking, did they?
They didn't, and they were going through a big turnover themselves.
Yeah.
So you think of guys like Petro, the year I got there, Big Pet, who I love, who's a real role model for me still to this day. Guys like Brad Thorne, Dane Carlaw, Sean Berrigan.
Yeah.
They
were on the way out, or
they moved on.
Yeah.
If you remember, Petro went to the Penrith Panthers, captained them for a few years. Thorny, I think he might have gone back to rugby union by then. Berrigan went overseas, or maybe down to Canberra by then. So there was a big turnover,
big changing of the guard. Were you comfortable with going into that big pond, being an outsider? Because as I said, they'd really brought players in from Sydney.
They really did. And whenever you start, I suppose people listening, whenever you start a new job and that, it's always a little bit daunting. And it's, you times that by 1,000 when it's a professional rugby league, especially trying to take over. And we weren't. I couldn't tie Petro or Thorny or Dane Carlaw's laces at all. But you know what? I was a worker. They had some really good young guys coming through. Guys like Nick Kenny, Dave Taylor, Sammy Thaiday was a real mainstay there. Corey Parker, all these guys who ended up being really good friends of mine. But the first few weeks, it was probably a bit of a feeling out process. And then after a solid night or two on the drink over the first couple of weeks, they sort of knew where I stood, and I knew where they stood, and we're all there for a common goal, and that was to be successful.
Knowing Wayne as I do, I'd assume he took a shine to you.
I think so. Yeah. I that 2008 was probably the most consistent football I'd played up until that point. I was, in the team week in, week out. At the Dragons, I was in the team week in, week out. My last year, 2007, at the Dragons, I had a few injuries and got suspended there. Found it hard to get back in the team, but it was like a real revitalisation for me, and it was a really special year. Except for at the end where our viewers can have a look on YouTube. Ashton Sims dropping the ball in a major semi-final, and
how'd you cope with that?
It was tough, man.
But you didn't cost them the game. It was just a moment. It was a moment in the game. There were a lot of moments prior to that, but because the clock was winding down,
that's nice of you to say. And it was also nice for Lockie to come up and say, because I was, you know, it was one of the biggest games that I'd played into that date. You know, I'd played a lot of grand final qualifiers for the Dragons. I played in, well, not a lot. I played in 2 there. We come up short, but 2008 just felt like our year. Like, it just felt like everything was clicking towards us marching to the grand final. Lockie just come off a really serious knee injury and was playing fantastic. Peter Wallace was on fire. Sammy Thaiday, got to say, probably one of the best forwards in the world in 2008. And we just had a really good momentum. Benny Hunnett was probably one of the best front rowers in the comp. Yeah. And everything was gearing towards that. And to take a hit up with I think it was about 50 seconds to go, and got chopped in half by, I think it was Sikamanu, one of the good men of rugby league. It just folded me like a calzone. I fell.
I picked the ball up, did he?
I think it was I think it was Izzy, Israel, who scored in the corner there. And I'm pretty sure, I can nearly guarantee it was Israel, because the next year he come there, and I think the first words he said was, "Thank you for that last year." Right. Yes. And it was, look, again, it was one of those adverse moments that I faced in life, but it wasn't the worst moment I'd faced in life. I knew I'd gone through harder times than that. You know what? You cop a bit of criticism online. That's cool. Yeah. But I'm not going to take criticism off people I wouldn't take advice from.
Yeah, good.
So it was one of them ones where, okay, the best thing about it was 3 weeks later, I had to get ready to the 2008 World Cup with Fiji, and that just took all the thought process, all the pressure off me, because I was going towards a common goal, and that was representing Fiji Barty in 2008 with a fantastic squad who made me feel welcome, made me feel whole again after a pretty crappy moment.
Yeah. So later on, just to talk about moments like that, Benny Hunt had a moment in a grand final for Brisbane when he dropped the ball off the kickoff. Have you ever spoken to him about that, or how did you feel for him at the time, knowing that you'd experienced something similar?
I hadn't talked to Block about that, but I knew exactly what he was thinking, and I knew exactly how he would react, and he reacted exactly the way a champion player reacts. You know what? It's life. Unfortunately, it'll punch you in the mouth from time to time, but it's about, you know, I think Denzel Washington said, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. It's one of them ones where, you know what? Shit happens. Yeah. It is what it is. Yeah. But it's about how I bounce back from it.
Does it make you stronger?
It does. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, if you go through life on this cloud 9, you might be very lucky, but very few have done that. You know, I think about the best rugby league players, and some of the best, you know, sportsmen and people I know in life have all had setbacks. You know what? I know guys who have played Test cricket who've been dropped from Test cricket. They're back in. I know guys from basketball who have been out of the sides and back in the sides at professional levels. Yeah. I know plenty of guys who have been dropped from NRL back into reserve grade Premier League, New South Wales Cup, and then back up and been stronger for it.
There's a good one this week with Ange Postecoglou overnight winning with Spurs.
Tottenham.
After everyone's just given him a pasting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the true mark of a man. It's how you react to adverse situations. Look, if you've got 2 ways, right? and I hate name dropping, I really do, but Mick Cronin gave me a fantastic piece of advice when I was about 17, and it's something that the situation called for him to come to my house. Look, I wasn't a great kid. I wasn't a rat bag, but I wasn't a great kid. Went up to the cricket oval there with all my cricket mates, drinking underage. Went to Cronin's pub, tried to buy a beer. He flat out refused. Yeah. He knew who I was. I obviously knew who he was, and I didn't say anything bad. I was like, oh, all right, whatever, blah blah blah. But I was underage drinking, and he knew that. Come down to my house the very next morning, knocked on the door. Hey, Pete, Dad, is Ashton here? Yeah, no worries. Ash, get up. Michael's here. Everyone knows him as Michael. A few people know him as Crow, but everyone Michael. Yeah. And I said, what does he want? He goes, no idea. What have you done? I said, no idea. Went up the front. He took me out the front of the house, and he just said, you've got a crossroads here. Okay? You're showing all the promise as a good rugby league player, but you can go one way with all your dickhead mates, or you can go the other way and you know, grab this career opportunity with both hands.
Yeah.
It's whether you want it or not. I can only give you advice. I can't make you do it. I can't help you do it. You've got to have the self-motivation to do it. Words to those effect. And in true Crow style, just turned around and walked back up there.
He's a great fella. Isn't he?
He's one of the greatest. Yeah, one of the greatest guys I've met. And in that situation too, there's a guy I want to give a shout out to. His name's Scotty Stewart. He's the current first grade coach at Gerringong.
Very good at his job.
And very good at his job.
Person.
St George Illawarra Welfare. And he rang me. He heard about it. Rang me and said, "Do the manly thing, and go up there and apologise to Michael." Tail between my legs. It was the longest 50 metres I've ever walked in my whole life. Walked in there, had to make sure I went around the back. Not many people know the Cronin's Hotel, but went around the back way where the under-18s could come in. Asked for Michael. Ashton, Michael, I really apologise about yesterday. You won't see that behaviour from me again.
Wow.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ashton. Anything sort of like anything else?
He didn't say, "Can I get you a beer?"
No, he didn't. He didn't even ask me a lemon squash. Jeez, mate, he charges like a wounded bull, old Crow. But that's a moment to me. He probably won't remember that, but I remember. I remember that as a real key moment in my life where I'm like, you know what? Hang with dickheads, you'll end up being a dickhead. Yeah. Hang with good people who've got good values, morals, who want to see you do well, who are going to inspire each other. Yeah. That's the path I want to take. Yeah. And that was a Michael Cronin moment, but I could tell you a million moments like that with my parents, my mum and my dad. Sure.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned Fiji, 3 World Cups, 12 tests for Fiji, and actually they were quite successful when you played for Fiji. Congratulations on that part of your career. You're very passionate about playing for Fiji.
I am, and I'm very passionate about ensuring that there are programs there to continue the development of grassroots rugby league in the Pacific Islands, not just Fiji, in the Pacific Islands, in the Melanesian Islands, because there's so much untapped resource over there. Representing Fiji, it was a real emotional moment for me because we grew up ensuring that we were proud of our Fijian heritage. My mother, she migrated over in the 60s with her family. She's one of 9. Moved to Mount Druitt there and forged a life in Australia. My pa and also Bumbu, my nan. They created a household that was just built on love, built on music, built on hard work, dedication. The Australian way: the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that was instilled down to us kids. It doesn't matter. You don't need all these fancy mobile phones or external things like TVs, DVD players, VHSs back in the day to have a fun childhood. And I'm truly indebted to Fiji and the Campbells, part of my family, but also the Simses as well. My dad's dad, Pa Sims, he was a very successful businessman, and moved down to Minamara, down to the golf course there at Kaima, in the early 90s, and were a big part of my life as well. Yeah.
So you find your way from Brisbane, your contract runs out, and you find your way to the North Queensland Cowboys, where you had quite a successful stint up there as well.
Yeah, look, that was probably the best years of NRL I'd played, and the most consistent there too. Playing under Neil Henry for 3 years and under Paul Green for 1 year. It was an incredible time up there. Not just the players I played with, but also the people that I met up there. They're just complete rugby league mad up there, and they've got fantastic people. I talk about people that I looked up to playing rugby league. I think of guys like Adrian Morley. I think of guys like Jason Riles, Petro Sivanasiva. They were guys that I really looked up to and wanted to emulate. In my role now as operations manager, I look to emulate or to try and take some really good traits off people in the managerial side, in the general operations side, guys like Shane Richardson, guys like Frank Panisi, and one guy up there who I took a lot of advice from and loved the way he operated was Peter Parr. He was a guy who had had a real influence on my life up there. One of the great men of rugby league.
Yeah, good fella.
Good fella, hard worker, enjoys a beer at the right time, but he's right down the line, sticks to policies, procedures, will always have your back.
And he's fair, isn't he?
He's fair as the day is long.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about Pari. And, it's not just Pari, it's a lot of them up there, the backroom staff. And you can see why they were so successful, especially when I left in 2014. And did they win in 2015? I can't remember.
Yeah, you'd remember.
But I helped them. I got rid of a bit of the dead wood.
The foundation,
Got rid of the dead wood and let them win in 2015.
So you went overseas. You went to Warrington. How'd that come about? I can't remember.
I did. Your memory is as foggy as mine.
Yeah. That's a big move.
It was a huge move at the time. So, as from memory and recollection, we were talking to Salford there, Dr. Marlon Kukash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think you picked the right horse.
He'd called me, and I was very interested in going over to the UK because the Cowboys wanted me for one more year, but I was just after 2 more years, and that was probably going to be my 2-year exit strategy.
Yeah.
I'd made sure I'd done some educational pieces, courses, certificates to ensure that I didn't finish rugby league without an education. But I wanted to make sure that, if I got the opportunity to go to the UK, in 2013 at a World Cup over there, I had the time of my life. 2002, I made the Australian schoolboys, went over to the UK and France and absolutely hated it. Yeah, but 11 years later, 2013, it was a complete 180. I absolutely loved it over there and thought, if I got the opportunity, I'm going to take it up. And I remember you talking to me when a guy by the name of Tony Smith, Brian Smith's brother, was the coach of Warrington Wolves at the time, and I had a really good conversation with him, about 40 minutes on the phone. He was keen. I was quite keen as well, but I just knew there was one more year at the Cowboys because I knew what we'd been building at the Cowboys there. And I remember distinctly having a conversation with you and said, look, you said it's up to you, but these big clubs don't come knocking all the time. And I knew Adrian Morley well, and I knew Roy Azatasi was over there, and I thought to myself, well, I talk about going outside my comfort zone. Well, this is as far as outside the comfort zone you can get, especially with 3 young kids.
And you're
at
a
home.
beach boy too, weren't
and
you?
A beach boy, yes. I thought, you know what, let's just go for it. Talking to Nicole, she was still a little bit hesitant, but she was ready to go where we all wanted to go. And look, as long as I got my family with me, it doesn't matter where I go. I could be playing rugby league in the middle of Asia. I don't care. As long as they're with me, home is where I lay my head is home.
And you've had plenty of success over there too, didn't you?
We had some good success. 2016 made the grand final, lost 10-6. 2016 made the Challenge Cup final, lost 12-8.
Great experience, but
great experience though. Got a couple of nice photos of me walking my son Kobe out on Old Trafford.
Wow.
He was one of the kids to walk out with, and just some really cool moments, some really cool highlights in my career, which, I suppose highlights and lowlights at the same time.
Yeah.
But I see him as a high more than a low light. Yeah, we lost the game. You know what? It sucks. I'm as competitive as the next person.
Yeah.
I hated it. I didn't talk to anyone for a couple of days after it. But looking back on it, seeing, got to play at Old Trafford and Wembley, where some of the greatest sportsmen have been on, and sportswomen have been on there in the recent years. But
so, mate, I've probably been over to England, probably almost a dozen times for work-related matters, footy, and
of course,
the relationships with those people at those clubs, they're fantastic. It's a wonderful experience because they welcome you with open arms. And Warrington in particular, there's a guy there, Simon Moran, who's what would you describe him as? He's a music
promoter. Manager and promoter.
Yeah.
And
So he looks after some of the biggest bands in the
looks
world.
after Adele and
U2.
I think it's Boyzo, U2 and things like that. Yeah.
So he might have been able to get you tickets to concerts and that. Do you recall ever having any luck?
I tried not to. I tried not to push him too much on there, but there was a band called Metallica that come over and he got me some tickets to the Reading Festival. Green Day come over, and Blink-182 come over. So some sort of metal and punk bands. Yeah. I tried to get to Motorhead over in Ireland, but I couldn't get there. And then I hate to say it, I think it was either Selena Gomez or one of them ones.
Really?
I had to go with Nicole, and
Geez, you didn't miss him.
I didn't miss him.
He's a good fella, but
one of the greats, mate.
Yeah.
You want to talk about guys who put their money where their mouth is and have rugby league at the very core essence of what they want. That's Simon Moran.
Yeah.
He's done wonders for that club, and the fans absolutely love him with good reason too.
Yeah.
You know, that Halliwell Jones, I'm not sure what it's called now, the stadium, but we used to have in 2015 and 2016 especially, we had record numbers every weekend. We had 15,000. It was only 15,000, but the ambience, how the stadium was built, everyone on top of you singing, yelling. Even that south stand when, I used to walk to the dead ball line after we scored a try and, you had Wigan fans spitting chips and, Castlewood fans giving me the two fingers up. I'd give them, just give a little bit of heat back.
Yeah.
I loved it because, like I mentioned before, I'm not the most skillful player. I wasn't the greatest player, but I think what people tell me, I was wholehearted, and that's what they respected. Someone who come over and gave it their all.
Were you known as the King of Warrington, or the Prince of Warrington? Or
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
They loved you, didn't they? They have a song for you.
They did. Yeah, they did. It was probably not one for camera, but it was. It was a song, but. Look, they embraced me, and I can see, I can see why people go over there and really enjoy it. I moved into the house where Trent Waterhouse was in. The whole street just absolutely adored rugby league and always looked after my kids. I think of the people over there, the Wire fans. My kids went to a place called Stockton Heath Public School, and they were so good with them. Not just because we were Warrington Wolves players, but guys like myself, Kurt Gidley, Roy Azatasi, we immersed ourselves in the community over there. I can see why people go over there, players go over there and probably don't enjoy it, is because they go over there and think, oh shit, it's cold or this and that, the other. I'm just going to stay inside. Well, I'd be bored as batshit as well. Yeah. So you know what? If it's cold, get a jacket on. If it's if it's raining, I will never say get an umbrella, but put your hood on. Get out there, immerse yourself in the community, enjoy the difference of culture and the difference of weather conditions and the diversity over there. I absolutely loved England. I think I've told you a million times, and I've told everyone a million times, look, when we first moved back to Australia, I didn't want to move back. I was digging my heels in like nothing else. Nicole was dragging me by my teeth because I had a job all set up there after footy, and the kids were enjoying school. They had Pommy accents and all that, which was a little bit worrying. But come back over to Shell Harbour here. They were at Shell Harbour, Warilla Way. I was back home for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I thought, you know what? Home's home. I've got to make the phone call back to England.
But you got home via Canada. You played in Canada.
I did.
What was that like?
And it was fantastic. Okay. It was a great experience. Look, anyone can say what they will about David Argyle. Look.
So you're playing for the Toronto Wolfpack, who were in the English Super League.
So no, we're English. England won. The League One to get promotion into the Super League. Right. And David Argyle, Australian born, lived over in the UK and also in Canada. He was one of the real big, the real big investors in behind the Toronto Wolfpack. In my time there, we had some really big names looking to get into the Super League.
So it was a stack side.
It was
some quality.
It was quality. Yeah. But we used to play against teams like Batley and York and all these small, all the Division Ones, the Halifax and all that. And it was brilliant, mate. Going to those little postage stamp fields. Getting yelled at. I don't know if I'm pretty sure it was Batley or Doncaster. I can't remember, but you stand at one dead ball line and you can hardly see the crossbar on the other one, and because the field is just like that. But no one cares. That's just footy. And, mate, that's what I absolutely loved about it.
Flight time from Canada to England?
7 hours.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad. So what we do, as silly as this sounds, we lived in Warrington the whole time I was at Toronto Wolfpack. But we'd play, I think it was 9 away games in England. So we were all based in Manchester.
And then do your block there.
And then you do a block of 9 home games over in Toronto. Yeah. And... You know what? That was tough being away from family for 9 weeks. Yeah. It really was. The first week I thought, yeehaw, here we go. This is great. But you know what? You start missing a few things. You start FaceTime and you're like, bloody hell. But okay, what do you do in those situations? Well, you get with like-minded people. We had a I think it was the YMCA next to us. It had gym, sauna, basketball, tennis. We used to do all these little competitions and that there. Myself, Josh McCrone, Chase Stanley, Darcy Lussick, we all bought secondhand just bikes, riding bikes. So we'd ride around the city, go and visit new places, see new things. But at the end of the day, we're all there for one reason, and that was to get, rugby league on a grander scale.
And you did.
And we did to a sense. A good friend of mine, still to this day, Brian Nobby Noble, one of the good men of rugby league. he had a quote that I've since taken off him, because he said, me and him were very much alike. Well, I'm not sure about that, Nobby, because he had 2 bony knees, a bad back, a big nose. But his was, I've got an expansionist mindset with a community heart. So I want to ensure the grassroots of rugby league are as strong as they can be, that we're really looking after the grassroots, strategies, actions, initiatives, programs to ensure our grassroots is really strong, but also give rugby league to the masses. I want people in North America, Asia, Europe to feel what I feel as a young kid with rugby league growing up, listening to rugby league on ABC Grandstand. Here we are at North Sydney Oval, Warren Boland, where the Illawarra Steelers take on the North Sydney Bears. I want people to feel that passion, when we're watching, when growing up, guys like Ray Warren and that talking about the Origins, grand finals, even Friday night football. There's rugby league, we've got to, we're an untapped resource in this world. I truly believe that. But I want to ensure, again, how does a house get built? It gets built by delivering strong foundations at the bottom, because if we don't, the whole house will wobble. Yeah. So that's where I see the pathway of rugby league moving in the future.
It's inspiring, and obviously you're doing your apprenticeship now, I guess in management in some way. Is stepping into clubland or NRL land something that might appeal to you down the track?
Well, look, if opportunity arises, absolutely, I'd be open to that. But right now, at this current moment, I just want to ensure, the rugby league on the South Coast is as strong as it can be. We're currently, we're up 3.5% on last year. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's about 120 players on last year. We're sitting just over 6,000 registrations at the moment, which makes us the 6th largest rugby league competition in New South Wales, which, that's a great statistic. But that's not just down to me. That's down to the proactive junior and senior board that I have, but also the really proactive and engaging club executives that we have all up and down the coast, from Gorillas in the north all the way down to Milton Ulladulla Bulldogs in the south, out to Moss Vale, the Southern Highland Storm there. We want to ensure that all our 15 junior clubs and all our 18 senior clubs have the opportunity to grow, to prosper, to thrive and not just survive for rugby league in the future. And again, I've probably chewed your ear off enough about it, but I'm right there at the front lines with them. I'm right there at the coalface because, again, at the end of the day, I don't want to be that voice on the end of a phone call. I don't want to be those fingers at the end of an email. I want to ensure that, I'm out there with my finger on the pulse, seeing what rugby league needs in our area, because I truly believe rugby league is the greatest game of all, and I want to ensure that, I'm only a custodian, you're only a custodian of this sport, and we want to make sure we leave it in a better place than how we found it.
So what's the game given you? What lessons has the game taught you?
Everything. Rugby league for me, the food in my belly, clothes on my back, roof over my head is all due to this sport. I think about that time with Michael Cronin and going one way or another, but also having the love at home. So, that be on time, be in uniform, manners and respect, go over there, respect everybody, fear no one. The values that the values that my parents taught me at a very young age was just solidified by rugby league. Routine, structure, consistency. You'll hear me say that all the time. I'll make sure, not just myself, people have a good routine, have a good structure, and be consistent with it. And if it doesn't work one day or it doesn't work for 1 week, it's okay to change your structure or your routine up a little bit, but be consistent with those things. Humility. Whether you're doing good or you've done something wrong, rugby league will always teach you humility. So. They're some of the greatest traits that that I've learned off rugby league, along with, your commitment, your sacrifice, your team first mentality. For me, inspiring others, because, us as a collective is better than the individual, right? So if we're better as a collective, the individual's going to stand out even more if that individual wants to stand out.
You've mentioned family a couple of times today. I know you're big on family. That's great. Where did you meet Nick? And she was an Iron Woman, wasn't she?
She was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole. So I've been with my wife for 23 years now. I've been married for 15 of those. And she's been with me for every step of the journey. So I met Nicole. She was competing for a surf club called Bulleye Surf Club in the Nutrigrain Iron Woman series. And as soon as I saw her, man, I was just like, she's out of my league, but I'm just going to give it a red hot crack here. All right, Sims, don't stuff up. Go and say something real cool.
What'd you come up with?
Hi.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
Powerful.
So really hit the mark there.
Yeah.
And then just did the caddy thing as well. Not the caddy thing, but just got one of my mates' girlfriends to ask her if she was interested in me. And
Tell us about your kids, mate. So they compete as well now. They're swimmers.
They do. Yeah, they do.
And...
So I've got a son, Kobe, who's 16, and then 3 daughters, Alani, 15, Isla, 12, and Kaya, 9. So,
jeez, you've been busy.
Yeah. Probably should have invested in a TV later on. No, but look.
So they train every morning? You take them to training?
They do. Yeah, they train every morning. So one of the things there is, we get up at 4:45 from Monday to Saturday. I take them, me and my wife take them out to swimming. We just go to the gym, muck around for an hour, pick them back up, back home, get ready for school, go to school. In the afternoon, you've got your afternoon sports. In the winter, it's sort of around footy and AFL. But in the summer, it's in and around surf club.
Yeah.
And they're all doing quite well. We're at a really good surf club called Warilla Barrack Point Surf Club, the home of the great David Boyle from the South. Yeah, he's and Mick Carberry, actually. Two of the great bunnies.
Boats, are they?
They used to. Yeah. Carbs has just gone through his 15th hip replacement, and Boyley's going through his 10th bloody shoulder, probably because they live life like an absolute
South Sydney
monster.
Rabbitohs, eh?
Two of the great South Sydney Rabbitohs there. And you know what, they're stalwarts of the club, and there's a really good club synergy there as well. And it's one of them ones where it's inviting for people to come in and just be a part of the community. And that's the great thing about, surf club and rugby league and a lot of sports down there. When I talk about rugby league and how passionate I am about rugby league, I don't want other sports to fall to the wayside. Absolutely not. I want people to be involved in sport, because what sport teaches you is that humility piece, but it's also that, winning and losing with humility, but it's also about binding communities, having, that camaraderie in your community, and meeting like-minded people it's a special element that sport brings. And I just, I wish all sports all the best, but I just want to ensure rugby league is here for a sustainable future, because at the end of the day, rugby league doesn't owe me a thing. I owe rugby league absolutely everything. And I truly say that, because without rugby league, what would I have been? A shit kicker from Gerringong.
What would have you done? When you left school, did you have a job?
I was one of the lucky ones who went straight into the NRL before all the studying and that.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a fireman, right?
Right.
So that was my big thing. Unfortunately, my sister Ruan, she got in there a little bit earlier than I did, and she's been a firer for around 14, 15 years now.
Yeah.
But rugby league's taken me so many places, man. It's incredible, from playing games in Queensland to Fiji to New Zealand, over in the UK, Catalan, France, Ireland, Scotland, playing games in Scotland. It's just been an incredible journey, Chimesy, and for all the injuries, I've got fingers like a bag of twisties. My knees are absolutely shot. My back's sore, but my mind's strong as ever.
You look terrific.
No, please don't. That's just what swimming laps and boiled eggs will do to you.
Listen, one of your other interests is mental health, and when you came back from England, you jumped in and worked in the mental health space for a couple of years with Dan Hunt, Bubsy Hunt, great man,
one of the greats.
What's it like? Are we keeping up to pace with what we need to do to look out and help people?
obviously there's the educational literacy and understanding piece there that can also be better, and that's what mental health movement and Dan Hunt is all about. Obviously, Chris Houston was there as well. Two guys who were good mates of mine growing up through the ranks, but with Dan. He's just hitting all these incredible marks at the moment. He's such a fantastic businessman, but such a loyal and passionate friend. And I truly say that he's built like a Sherman tank too. If you think I'm in good shape, you wait till you see the big dog. He's looking good at the moment. But what he does, he goes around all different workplaces. You know what? He's not a 9 to 5. We used to do toolbox talks at 4 o'clock for coal miners going underground, and you could see him coming in going, what are we doing this for? And you deliver a 45-minute, just giving them education, understanding of not only how to look after their own mental health, but just support the others around them. Yeah. And then you see them, after your session, we're not there to give this big, huge, inspiring thing, but we're here we're there to give out some educational pieces in and around how to better manage your own mental health and be proactive and accountable in looking after it, but also keeping an eye on each other. Yeah. And then you'd see some of the biggest, toughest guys sort of mulling around at the end there and come up to you and just ask you a few questions. And that's breaking that stigma of people reaching out and seeking support if them or someone they know are going through a hard time. Because at the end of the day, we'll all go through hard times. Yeah. We'll all go through tough times, but we don't have to go through them alone. And just give an understanding of what options and opportunities are out there and educational pieces are out there to reach out to because we don't know what we don't know.
It gives you a good background in clubland too, doesn't it? Because, clubs are big teams. It's not just 17 players. It's a big engine. So I think it sets you up well.
I think it, and you know what, it's great to see, at Group 7, our female space has just grown exponentially, whether it's league tag or whether it's tackle, mate, where our female registrations are right up there, and it's fantastic because at the end of the day, rugby league we've probably catered to only one half of the demographic for so long. Yeah. It wasn't only 15, sort of 20 years ago where girls could only play up to under 12s and then they had to stop playing or play another sport. No. Now we've got in Group 7, we've got under 12 girls tackle, under 14, 16 girls tackle, under 18 girls tackle, open women's tackle. Yeah. But it also gives a good understanding of what that does too, going back to the point in around the mental health is, being able to talk to coal miners over here and, female league tag players over there, a secretary over here, a club president over there. For me, I've never had I hope no one could ever say to me, I've never had an ego. Mm. I could talk to the CEO of a company or the janitor of the company, mate, or the busman of the company, mate. I'll talk to him. I'll give them both the same respect because at the end of the day, he's providing for his family and himself. Yeah. He's providing, or he or her is providing for themselves as well. And it doesn't matter what path you take. We're all on this journey of life together, man.
Mate, you're in a good place. You seem very happy.
I am, mate. It's it's just about for me, it's about what am I doing on a daily process to be happy. Look, like everyone, you have your crappy days, you have your shitty days, you have your issues, your problems that you've got to deal with. Yeah. I try to spend a whole career staying away from drama and rumours and innuendo, but unfortunately as operations manager, it's sort of on my front doorstep every year. But it's about how you manage it and the people around me. That's the best thing. Yeah. We've got a really strong senior board led by our senior president, Scott McLaurin, who I look up to as a real mentor. And also in our junior rugby league as well, we've got a guy by the name of Kevin Whitford down at Milton Ulladulla Bulldogs, who I really look up to as well. So I've got good people around me, and that's what I want. I don't have an ego. I want people who know rugby league better than me around me. I'm going up to the Penrith Panthers, the academy there, and their centre of excellence in a couple of weeks to go and learn off some people who to be a sponge, man. But like I've been around rugby league for 40 now. I've been around rugby league for 35 years. Yeah. I know a lot, but I don't know everything, and I want to ensure that I can try and not overflood my knowledge or mind of the game, but to ensure that what they're doing on the grandest stage, I want to try and water it down and put it to the community level.
Yeah. Mate, look, you had an amazing career as a player, and I think you're going to have an incredible career as an administrator because you You inspire so many people, mate. You've never changed, and I must apologise for getting that Canterbury meeting that day. I forget things, mate.
Folksy, that was a really good meeting too.
Great
I think
bloke,
I
Folksy.
think you faxed through your apology. Put your apology into Folksy.
I can't remember. But, mate, thanks so much for joining us today on Chiming In. Thanks,
a pleasure.
Mate. Good
Thanks,
on you,
James.
buddy.